I think we all know Eliza's little app thing didn't work out. Uncle Richard's voice boomed across the Thanksgiving table, cutting through the polite conversation about football and pie recipes like a chainsaw through butter. 15 family members turned to look at me, some with pity, others with barely concealed satisfaction, as Uncle Richard raised his wine glass in what he probably thought was a sympathetic toast. I was reaching for the sweet potato casserole when I realized this wasn't just holiday ribbing. This was a full-scale intervention about my failed career. The little app thing he was dismissing had 4.2 million active users and had just been valued at $47 million by Google's acquisition team. Did my family really think I'd been sitting in my apartment for 3 years playing Candy Crush? "We're just worried about you, sweetie," Aunt Diane said, her voice dripping with concern that felt more like condescension. "You're 32 now. You can't keep pretending to run a business. It's time to get a real job with benefits, stability. My friend Linda's daughter got you an interview at her insurance company. Entry level, but it's a start." My cousin Brandon smirked from across the table. "Yeah, Eliza, some of us have actual careers. I just made senior analyst at the consulting firm. 6 figures, corner office, company car. That's what success looks like." Brandon's corner office was a cubicle with a window view, and his company car was a Zipcar membership, but I didn't correct him. "The tech bubble burst," my father said with the authority of someone who'd never worked in tech. "All those apps and startups, they're just kids playing around. You gave it a good try. No shame in admitting it didn't work." Mom patted my hand. "We've set up the interview for Monday. Business casual, 9 a.m. It's time to move forward." I checked my phone under the table. 6:47 p.m. The email from Google should be arriving any minute. Lawrence had said between 6:45 and 7 p.m. Pacific time, right during dessert, which felt almost poetic now. "I appreciate the concern," I said calmly, setting down my fork. "But I'm not looking for a job." "Denial isn't healthy," Uncle Richard said. "We all saw your Facebook. You haven't posted about work in months. That means the startup failed. It's okay to admit it." I hadn't posted about work because I'd been in acquisition negotiations under a strict NDA, but they'd interpreted silence as failure. "Your lease is up next month, right?" Aunt Diane continued. "You can move back home, save money while you get back on your feet. Your old room is exactly as you left it." My old room with the twin bed and posters from high school. While I currently lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Palo Alto that cost $4,200 a month, a cost I paid easily from my startup's revenue. "I'm not moving home." "Pride isn't going to pay your rent," Dad said. "The app thing was a nice dream, but dreams don't put food on the table. You need stability." My phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen. From LawrenceKimmyGoogle.com. Subject, Transit Ease Acquisition. Final terms, confidential. "What kind of app was it anyway?" Brandon asked with fake interest. "Something with photos? Everyone's doing photo apps." "Public transportation optimization," I said quietly. "Transit Ease. It helps commuters find the fastest multimodal routes using real-time data from buses, trains, bikes, and rideshares across 43 cities. So like Google Maps." Brandon laughed. "Yeah, I can see why that didn't work. Google already exists." "It's different from Google Maps. It integrates real-time crowdsourced data, predictive algorithms for delay patterns, and carbon footprint tracking. Users can optimize for speed, cost, or environmental impact." "Sounds complicated," Uncle Richard said dismissively. "Regular people don't want complicated. They want simple. That's why your app didn't catch on." 4.2 million active users, 50,000 new downloads per week. But sure, it didn't catch on. "Can we not talk about Eliza's failure at Thanksgiving?" my younger sister Madison said, trying to be helpful but making it worse. "Let's focus on positive things. Like my promotion, I'm now assistant manager at Nordstrom." Everyone congratulated Madison enthusiastically. She beamed, 26 and thrilled about her $42,000 salary and employee discount. I was genuinely happy for her. But the contrast wasn't lost on me. Her modest retail promotion received celebration while my 3 years of building a successful tech company received pity. "The thing about startups," my father's friend Greg announced from the end of the table, "is that 90% fail. It's just statistics." "Eliza, you're actually in good company. Most entrepreneurs fail multiple times before they succeed. Maybe your next venture will work out." My phone buzzed again. "Lawrence, kimmygoogle.com. Terms attached. Call me after you review. This is a strong offer." I opened the attachment, quickly scanning the document I'd already reviewed in draft form a dozen times. Letter of intent. Acquisition. Acquirer. Google LLC target. Transitees, Inca purchase. Price, $47,000 terms, 42 mammaters cash, 5 nada in Google stock. Closing, 45 days pending due diligence, $47 million. For my failed little app. "You're being awfully quiet, Eliza," Aunt Diane observed. "We're not trying to hurt your feelings. We just want what's best for you." "I know," I said. "You want stability for me. Security. That makes sense." "No." "Exactly." Mom looked relieved. "So you'll go to the interview Monday?" "Because I don't need an entry-level insurance job." I picked up my phone. "Would you mind if I shared something, since we're discussing my failed startup?" Uncle Richard leaned back in his chair. "Sure. Let's hear the post-mortem. What went wrong?" I stood up and walked to the TV in the dining room, the one they'd been using to display a slideshow of family photos. I connected my phone via Bluetooth. "Nothing went wrong. Let me show you Transitees' current metrics." The TV screen changed from a photo of baby Madison to a dashboard. Transitees, November 2024. Metrics active users, 4.2 M. Monthly growth, 12% cities covered, 43. Average session time, 8.3 minutes daily active users, 1.7 minutes App Store. Rating, 4.8 stars, 347K reviews. The table had gone quiet. 4 million users? Brandon said slowly. 4.2 million. We crossed 4 million in September. Been growing steadily since. "But you never said anything," Mom protested. "I did say things. I said I was busy with the app. I said user acquisition was going well. I said we were in growth phase. Everyone heard still playing around with that app thing." I swiped to the next screen. Transitees, revenue 2024. Monthly, recurring revenue, 380K, annual run rate, 456 million. Premium subscriptions, 127K B2B partnerships, 23 cities profit margin, 34%. "You're making nearly $4 million a year?" Dad's voice cracked. "The company is, yes. I pay myself $180,000 in salary, and I own 62% of equity. My co-founder owns 23%, and we have angel investors who own the remaining 15%. Aunt Diane was staring at the screen like it was showing alien hieroglyphics. "I don't understand. If the company is successful, why did you stop posting about it?" "Because 3 months ago, we entered acquisition negotiations with Google. We signed an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. I couldn't talk about it publicly." "Acquisition," Uncle Richard repeated. "You mean someone wants to buy your app?" "Someone did buy my app. Well, they will in 45 days pending due diligence, but the terms are finalized." I pulled up the email from Lawrence and mirrored it to the TV. The letter of intent filled the screen. Purchase price, $47,000. Someone dropped their fork. It clattered against a plate, the sound absurdly loud in the sudden silence. $47 million, Brandon said faintly. $42 million in cash, $5 million in Google stock. My 62% stake means I'll personally receive about $29 million in total compensation, minus taxes. After capital gains tax, I'll net approximately $23 million. Mom had her hand over her mouth. Dad had gone pale. Madison was scrolling frantically on her phone. probably looking up transities to verify this wasn't an elaborate prank. "This can't be real," Uncle Richard said. "You're 32 years old." "I'm 32 years old, and I've been working 100-hour weeks for 3 years building this company. I taught myself to code when I was 15. I got a computer science degree from UC Berkeley. I worked at Uber for 4 years learning transportation, logistics, and data science. Then I quit, used my savings to build transities, lived in a studio apartment with 2 roommates while I bootstrapped the initial product, and slowly built a user base that grew into millions." I swiped to another screen, a photo of me and my co-founder David at TechCrunch Disrupt in 2022, holding our award for Best Transportation Innovation. We won this 18 months ago. It was covered in TechCrunch, VentureBeat, and The Verge. I posted about it on Facebook. 3 people liked it. "Uncle Richard, you commented, 'Nice pic.'" He looked away. "I've been interviewed on tech podcasts. I spoke at a conference in Austin last March about women in tech. I posted about all of it. Everyone just saw a girl playing with an app." "We didn't know it was serious," Mom said weakly. "Because you didn't ask. You saw I wasn't working a traditional job and assumed I was failing. You saw I lived frugally and assumed I was broke. You saw I was focused on my company and assumed I was delusional." Aunt Diane found her voice. "If you're so successful, why do you still drive that old Honda?" "Because I don't need to prove my success with a luxury car. The Honda runs fine. Why would I spend money on a depreciating asset when I could invest it in growing my user base?" "And your apartment is so small," Mom added, as if just realizing all their concerns had been misplaced. "My apartment is perfectly adequate for my needs. I spend most of my time working. I don't need a big house to impress anyone." Brandon was still staring at the TV screen, at the $47 million number. Google is giving you $47 million for an app. Google is paying $47 million for a company with over 4 million users, proprietary algorithms, partnerships with 43 cities, and a proven revenue model that's growing 12% month over month. They're not buying an app. They're buying infrastructure, data, and market position. My phone rang. Lawrence's name flashed on the screen. "Excuse me," I said. "I need to take this call." I walked to the kitchen, leaving the dining room in stunned silence. "Lawrence, hi." "Eliza, did you get the final terms? What do you think?" "They're excellent. I'm ready to proceed." "Fantastic. Legal will send over the full documentation tomorrow. We're looking at a January closing. You're going to be very wealthy." "I'm already pretty comfortable, but yes, this will be life-changing." "You sound calm. Most founders are freaking out at this point." "I'm at Thanksgiving dinner. My family just found out about the acquisition by seeing the email on my TV." Lawrence laughed. "How's that going?" "They're processing. They thought my startup had failed and were staging an intervention. And now they're learning the difference between quiet success and loud failure." After hanging up, I returned to the dining room. Everyone was exactly where I'd left them, still staring at the TV screen where the acquisition terms remained displayed. "So," I said, sitting down and picking up my pumpkin pie, "about that insurance job interview Monday, I'm going to have to pass." "Eliza," Dad said carefully, "we owe you an apology." "Several apologies," Mom added. "We should have believed in you," Madison said softly. "I'm sorry." Uncle Richard cleared his throat. "When you say $23 million after taxes, that's yours? Personally?" "That's mine, yes. I'll also maintain a relationship with Google as a consultant during the transition period, which comes with additional compensation, and I'm already planning my next venture." "Next venture?" Aunt Diane squeaked. "You're going to start another company?" "Why not? I'm 32. I have capital now, I have experience, I have a network. I have ideas for improving urban mobility that transities only started to address." Brandon had recovered enough to ask, "Can I get some investment advice?" "You can, but you won't like it. Live below your means, stop buying things to impress people, and invest the difference. That's how wealth is built. Slowly, consistently, without announcement." "That's it? That's the secret?" That's it. There's no shortcut. I lived in a tiny apartment for 3 years while building this company. I drove my old Honda while Brandon posted photos of his new Audi on Instagram, the one he can barely afford the payments on. I skipped expensive vacations, designer clothes, fancy restaurants. I invested in my business instead of my image. The Audi comment hit home. Brandon's face flushed. Success doesn't look like what people think it looks like, I continued. It looks like discipline, sacrifice, delayed gratification. It looks boring from the outside, which is why everyone thought I was failing. Aunt Diane was crying now. We were so wrong about you. You saw what you expected to see. People do that. They see someone living modestly and assume struggle. They see someone without traditional markers of success and assume failure. What happens now? Dad asked. After Google buys the company? After closing, I'll work with their team for 6 months on integration. I'll vest my stock over 4 years. I'll probably take a few months to travel. I haven't had a real vacation in 3 years. Then I'll start planning the next company. You're not going to retire? Mom asked. I'm 32 and I love building products. Why would I retire? We sat in awkward silence for a moment before Madison asked quietly, Can I ask you something? Why didn't you tell us? Really? I considered the question. Because every time I mentioned the company, someone dismissed it. Every time I tried to explain what I was building, someone changed the subject. After a while, I stopped trying. I just kept my head down and worked. We should have listened, Dad said. Yes, you should have. Uncle Richard raised his wine glass, his earlier confidence completely deflated. To Eliza, who apparently knows exactly what she's doing. They all raised their glasses, toasting my success in the same dining room where, 20 minutes earlier, they'd been planning my career intervention. I didn't raise my glass. Instead, I took a bite of pumpkin pie. This pie is excellent, I said. Who made it? I did, Aunt Diane said quietly. Well, you should start a bakery. It's really good. Oh, I couldn't. I'm not qualified. Neither was I. I just learned to code and started building. Qualifications are overrated. Execution is what matters. My phone buzzed with messages from David, my co-founder, and from other team members who'd heard the terms were finalized. Congratulations, celebrations, excited plans for the future. I silenced the notifications and focused on my family. My well-meaning, presumptuous, ultimately loving family who'd thought they were helping me by pushing me toward stability. For what it's worth, I said, I understand why you were worried. From the outside, my choices didn't make sense. But that's the thing about building something new. It never makes sense to people who aren't building it. We're proud of you, Mom said. Now you are. 2 hours ago, you were staging an intervention. We're proud of you anyway, she insisted. I smiled. I know, and I love you guys, even when you're trying to get me entry-level insurance jobs. About that job, Aunt Diane said. Should I tell Linda to cancel? Please do. And tell her your niece says hello from her successful, definitely not failed startup. The rest of Thanksgiving was subdued, everyone processing the revelation that the family failure was actually the family's biggest success story. They asked careful questions about the company, the acquisition, my plans. They listened differently now, with respect instead of pity. But the moment I'd remember wasn't the congratulations or the apologies. It was Uncle Richard, 3 hours later as people were leaving, pulling me aside. I was wrong about you, he said simply. And I'm sorry. I thought I was being realistic. Turns out I was just being small-minded. I appreciate that. One question. When did you know you were going to succeed? I thought about it. I didn't know. I believed, I worked, I iterated, I persisted. Knowledge came later. Belief came first. He nodded slowly. That's the difference between us. I only believe in what I already know. You believed in what you were building. After everyone left, I sat in the living room with my parents, the house quiet for the first time all day. $23 million, Dad said wonderingly. What are you going to do with it? Invest most of it. Build the next company. Give some to causes I care about. Live comfortably, but not extravagantly. You're not going to change? I already changed. I changed from someone who dreamed about building a company to someone who actually built one. That transformation happened 3 years ago. The money is just confirmation. Mom hugged me tight. We really are proud of you, even if we didn't show it. I know, Mom. And you definitely don't need that insurance job? Definitely not. Good, because I never thought you'd be happy selling insurance anyway. I drove home to my modest apartment in my old Honda, $47 million richer on paper, fundamentally unchanged in reality. They'd announced my startup failed during Thanksgiving dinner. The acquisition offer arrived during dessert. And somewhere between the pumpkin pie and the apologies, my family learned an important lesson. Quiet doesn't mean failing, and success doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up in an email, right on time.